think we've got, I can see, I don't know if you guys can see, but I think we've got some people joining. So I will just kick off by saying welcome to all of you who are joining us. I can see the numbers going up as we speak. So a very warm welcome today to a digital first approach to building drinks brands, which is the topic we'll be discussing. We're going to get started quite soon, but I'll just give a couple people a few more minutes to join. And also, I'll just say as well, my name is Oren, and I'll be hosting the webinar on behalf of WonderWorks. I also want to say a really big thank you to our panelists, Sophie, Amy, and Will, who are here today, and our amazing co-host, Ellie. Without you guys, it wouldn't be possible. So thanks so much for participating. And yeah, we'll get going in just a couple minutes as well. There'll be options as well for questions. So please, if you're attending, do feel free just to type in the chat box or the Q&A, write them in, and we'll do our best to answer as we go along. And then also, if you'd like to pop your name in the chat box and just say hello and perhaps where you're joining us from, or maybe what company or drinks brand you work for or represent, we'd love to hear from you. So I'll write that in as well. Just so that people know they can say hello. But yeah, I think I'll give it a couple more minutes there. Great. See a few familiar names on the side. Hi, Harry. Hi, Jules. Welcome. And Sarah and Pat, warm welcome. That's great. Great. Yeah, I think we'll give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll get going. A few more people joining, but yeah, do feel free to say hi if you'd like to in the chat and where you're tuning in from today.
I think a couple of people are saying the chat box is disabled.
Oh no, let me fix that. Let me see if I can enable that. Bear with me 2 secs. Right, I'll figure that out on the back end while we get going, and then you'll be allowed to chat. Sorry about that. But yeah, lovely to see some familiar faces. And I think, yeah, let's make a start and I'll figure out the chat box in the meantime. But I can see as well, a couple of you are typing in via the Q&A. So thanks very much for that. But yeah, we'll fix that shortly. In the meantime, I will just say, so for those of you who've just joined us, my name's Oren. And I'll be co-hosting today with Ellie on behalf of WonderWorks. I think if you're not familiar with us, we're a London-based creative agency with a focus exclusively on the drinks industry. And our WonderNETwork, which is what this webinar is part of, is really a community of drinks professionals who meet quarterly to network and share insights and learn from each other about the modern day drinks industry and some of the trends that we see emerging today. So today's webinar is entitled, as you know, Digital First Approach to Building Drinks Brands, which feels quite timely and relevant, really, as a topic. So we've brought the following speakers together to really take a deep dive into how digital can be applied to drinks, hopefully leaving you with valuable tools and resources to apply to your business or brand, and also to take away. So I'll just say a very little bit about our connection to the topic and before passing over to our lovely co-host and speakers. So a little bit, about why we're here. As a creative agency working exclusively in drinks, we've really met a whole range of drinks brands who've embraced the digital marketplace. These brands, we see them finding opportunities to launch and grow in this arena. And we've also seen more other established brands who've had to adapt a more digitally savvy approach to stay relevant today. So everything from kind of voice-assisted tastings to NFTs, the industry's really come a long way in terms of digital adoption, something that the global pandemic of the last couple of years has really done a lot to accelerate, with brands moving far beyond kind of the initial initiatives of D2C to things like virtual experiences, events, and also at-home education, really to reach new heights in digital. But there's still quite a long way to go. We've seen that digital can help brands do everything from attract and engage new audiences, further education, help consumers make better drinks choices, offer more choice, and enable better forecast and market distribution. But with all of that, it really begs the question, can brands today afford not to have a digital strategy? And for those that do, how do you activate and how do you succeed by really doing it well? So we'll cover quite a bit of this off in the webinar, and we'll go a bit more into this in depth, really looking at kind of topics such as the rise of the D2C channel and the sales mix, how you can do sampling and education well in digital, how to reach a digitally led consumer, how to adopt a digital first approach to launching a drinks brand, and then also how to do so successfully in a mature market, for example. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Ellie, one of the real experts and our wonderful co-host today. So Ellie is founder and chief joy maker of the award-winning Caleño, the non-alcoholic tropical gin and rum alternatives brands, which is inspired by the flavors of Colombia and also available across most major retailers in the UK as well as D2C. Ellie is Entrepreneur of the Year Southwest for the Great British Entrepreneur Awards and has also bagged the title of Young Achiever of the Year for the Drinks Business Awards. She's on a mission to bring the joy back into not drinking with a really unapologetically bold, vibrant, and joyful non-alcoholic brand. And she brings her experience of launching and building Caleño D2C during the pandemic and also targeting the under 35s market through digital to the discussion today. Thanks so much for joining us, Ellie. And without further ado, I will hand over to you to introduce the panelists and yeah, start the questions.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Erin, and pleasure to be here. I'll just quickly do like a brief overview of my own experience on digital, which I'm going to let the speakers kind of do their thing and just interject when relevant. But yeah, exactly like you said, launched Caleño back in 2019, and we actually launched on D2C first of all, website, then Amazon, and for me it's always been really important to stay close to the customer, understand who they are, what's important, what's working, what's not. Then enter kind of global pandemic, and it became even more important to be online, to kind of, you know, we were a really young brand still, so to keep our brand going, really needed to kind of depend and rely on that channel. So super excited to be here and actually hear from some of the speakers and get their view on continuing to grow brands in the digital space. So first of all, we have Amy Fullerton, who is the global head of CRM for Neo Cocktails, a brand that I know well and have tried, premium ready-to-drink cocktails delivered straight to your mailbox. Amy has worked with the fast-growing D2C e-commerce startup Neo from its launch in 2020. So she comes with experience in e-commerce and over 10 years in digital marketing and communication. So really excited to hear your experience, Amy, in terms of bringing insight on how to deliver growth to consumer brands through digital. Then next up, we've got Will Lawrenson, conversion rate optimization consultant and founder of Customers Who Click. So conversion, engagement and retention are all things under Will's umbrella, and he'll join our panel giving us insight into those three things: conversion rate optimization, and really understands the power of fostering consumer loyalty through understanding and knowing your customers, and importantly ensuring that customers are happy, which is the number one goal. And then finally, last but not least, we have Sophie Bond, who is the marketing director of Nice Drinks, a canned wine company. This is the fastest growing canned wine brand in the UK, and Sophie has a wealth of digital knowledge up her sleeve with an extensive background, not just in digital, but in consumer products across the food, beverage and beauty industry, and she's instrumental to the brand's continued growth as it seeks to make wine more accessible. All its motto, which I love, wine for whenever. Hashtag. So those are our three panelists and who I'm going to be kind of, I guess, questioning today and just digging deeper into the insights. I guess to kind of start off with, I would love to just touch a little bit more broadly on the market landscape currently. So in today's market, we've seen a really rapid increase in the availability of digital technologies and the rise of Industry 4.0. And that is creating a vast amount of opportunities as well as challenges for the drinks industry. I'd love to know how drinks brands have adapted to these changes over the last 2 to 3 years and what the shape of the industry, what we think the shape of the industry looks like now. Let me start with Amy.
I mean, I think being in a mature market such as drinks and something that's so readily consumed out and about, not so much at the home a couple of years ago, it's changed significantly. But I think largely digital and certainly lockdowns for us at Neo Cocktails made us think slightly differently in terms of how to introduce a concept, introduce a range, get people trying and interested in a brand that's slightly on the fringe and not so accepted just a few years ago. And so it's really been an interesting journey, I think, particularly for us at Neo Cocktails, in trying to understand how to overcome not being able to enter retail, not being able to enter wholesale, not being able to leverage physical sampling to get people to get to know the brand. And I'm sure Sophie's also going to speak to that as well from the NICE point of view. But for us at Neo, it was very much trying to, I guess, we weren't the most like crazy out there brand. We're fairly premium, where we position ourselves a little bit more in the luxury space. And so we had to try and approach it from a more like air quote refined point of view. But we certainly had to leverage all of the classic e-com elements, you know, search, social, paid, with very, very tiny budgets and largely customer experience, and make sure that we were focusing in those areas as much as we could without anything physical at our fingertips after we launched in 2020.
Yeah, certainly focuses the mind, right?
Yeah.
And what about you, Sophie? What's your view on kind of the shape of the industry and what the market landscape looks like today?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me and I guess my experience over the past few years, you know, obviously, first and foremost, I can't not mention it, COVID was such a fundamental shift for everyone, but particularly for the drinks industry. And I think, you know, certainly in my experience, a lot of the brands I worked with, I was actually with Camden Town Brewery at the time. And all of a sudden, the majority of the business closed overnight, with the pubs and bars closing, and we just had to pivot pretty quickly, as I'm sure a lot of people did. And, you know, I think for me, in terms of actually a lot of, you know, drinks brands who've predominantly been on-trade focused or built, you know, up their brand within that type of environment and venues, very quickly had no other choice but to ultimately focus on digital. And I think from that has continued to grow. You know, I think for us, so at NICE, you know, with the likes of platforms like Amazon Prime or quick commerce, you know, people now are just expecting things quite on demand as well. And I think actually when certainly before my time at NICE, when Lucy and Jeremy launched the business, again, it was sort of, yeah, mid-pandemic. And actually, you know, this development of home premise, if you want to call it, although, yes, you know, canned wine was there for very much convenience and still is. Actually, you know, looking at this shift of how people, their behaviors and attitudes at home and how they were consuming, well, more specifically alcohol, was really through moderation. So actually, you know, we found that there was more of a, I guess, a surge through our Amazon side of the business and D2C, as canned wine actually lent itself so well to that portion control. So if you just want to have one, but you don't want to waste a whole bottle. And I think actually, you know, bringing on a lot of customers through that time has just enabled us to grow and really build on that. But I think, yes, certainly the biggest challenge from my experience was COVID, as I say, and it was at a time where I had to shift quite quickly. One of the examples being at Camden, we launched like a virtual brewery bar and had to kind of almost overnight, bring some joy into people's lives. And actually what a lot of people were missing was just going down to the pub. Couldn't even do that. So then how could we bring it to people at home? And utilizing platforms such as Instagram Lives at the time, and hosting different events and getting people on board, and doing what we could. And yeah, from that, albeit it wasn't, a lot of the focus went back when the pubs and restaurants opened, but it certainly enabled us to bring people into our world digitally and continue to build on that relationship.
Yeah, super interesting. I guess what you've touched on there, Sophie, around like the major kind of channel shifts that we've seen over the last couple of years, and certainly I saw it with Colenio. Obviously we're in the kind of non-alcoholic drink side of the market, and there's often like a misconception that everyone kind of drank through the pandemic, and I think to start with they did drink a lot of alcohol, but actually more and more we saw people kind of turning to alcohol-free alternatives and moderating, just because of to adapt to their environment. So it was interesting how digital channels and other channels can kind of work symbiotically to kind of shift and adapt to the changing consumer. I wanted to kind of touch on talk about D2C and the role it plays within the kind of wider sales mix. So we're often very familiar with kind of first generation of D2C brands who grew predominantly with the rise of social media, many becoming household names. We've touched on COVID and how that was a really significant catalyst for change in D2C, with online shopping becoming, I think, more accessible and more attractive to a broader range of shoppers, just through brands having that real necessity to kind of move to online. So very much opening the way for new brands to kind of come in, new and established brands to grow, to reach new audiences. What do we think today the role is that D2C plays within the sales mix? How does it impact on strategy for perhaps smaller independent brands, but also for larger organizations? Will, I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, sure. So I think it does depend a bit on the size of the company, the type of products they're selling. But I think, obviously if a brand goes purely D2C, that's great. But for the brands who are retail as well, there's got to be a reason to go D2C with a brand, right? If I can go down to the supermarket and pick up a couple of cans, you've got to give me a really good reason to go to the D2C website and place an order, which is going to have to be quite a large order, right? In the drink space, just to cover like costs of shipping and make sure there's good margin on an order, you're probably looking at 50, 60 pound minimum spends. That's what I've seen quite a lot. And so there's got to be a really good reason for me to commit to that amount of product in one go. So, tactics or strategies that I see work really well is, particularly for brands who have retail presence, is to just give a different experience online, give different products, different offerings, so that you're not competing so much with the supermarkets or Amazon, because you're not offering the same products on your D2C site. So that might be, you can only buy a mixed case on the brand website, or there are unique flavors, exclusive flavors on the D2C website. Or it could just be those other kind of brand building experiences that brands can offer. So, I don't think D2C necessarily has to be seen as purely a sales channel and just, trying to shift the proportion of sales away from retail a bit and maybe to a more balanced split. You can just see it as an opportunity to engage with your audience, engage with your customers, get the feedback from them, use that for product development and insight into growing the business, but also just create a bit of brand loyalty as well, right? If you can give people a reason to like the brand outside of just the drink itself, then they're more likely to come to you for a purchase, but also they're more likely to just pick up a few extra drinks in the store when they walk by them.
Yeah, super interesting point, because I think people assume that that having your own website is always about sales, but quite often it can be a brand hub, it can be an education hub, there can be a different reason for why you're pushing consumers towards that, just to kind of, I guess, aid discovery. And we'll talk about education a little bit later on. So thanks, Will. Amy, I guess you've got first-hand experience of launching a purely drinks brand across D2C. How did a brand like Neo break into quite an established market using a digital first approach? I've seen the figures, like you moved from sales of 700,000 in the year before COVID to over 4 million in 2020. So fantastic growth story. I'm sure a lot of people would love to know the approach you took in getting there.
Probably similar to a lot of people in 2020, just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, just trying to to make it all happen. But Neo Cocktails, when we launched in the UK just at the end of 2019, and we were fully fledged in 2020, was just focused on D2C. We weren't really interested in an omni-channel mix just yet, and we've started to break out into that just in the last year. But so luckily all of our focus already at the start of 2020, before we'd even heard the word COVID, was very much geared around how do we create a fantastic customer experience for them to explore what is commonly only found at a bar when you're facing a mixologist, and for them to walk you through what do you feel like, what kind of spirit do you like, what kind of flavor profile do you like. And a lot of it was underpinned by three things that we decided on, which was choice, quality, and convenience. And we decided that everything we did that year had to focus just on that. And that became even more apparent when we were thrown into lockdown, and we were a tiny team of 2 in the UK trying to deliver an overnight surge, is what it felt like that very first weekend in lockdown. Certain things for us, I think, stemmed from the decision to put the customer in, and I mean, Ellie, you said at the start, putting the customer right at the center of the experience. We invested in CRM. We made sure that our customer service was fully set up. So before we even started having to deliver quite high volumes, we already understood that customer service was our priority. Communicating with the customer and protecting their experience of the brand, building the trust around that, particularly when couriers are failing, was our number one. So anything that happened throughout that year, it always came back to what will they think, what do they need to know, how much more can we tell them about either the product, so that's either through just a post-purchase experience, or if something's gone wrong and the product hasn't really yet arrived with them because the courier's lost the parcel, for example. I'm sure we all had our own courier experience and disaster throughout lockdown. So I think for us, it was being, I guess, very aware of how to be digitally savvy. We invested in search very, very early on, and we went quite hard on keyword analysis and keyword targeting very early on, which actually underpinned our PR approach, not just our on-site content approach. And what I mean by that is that we decided on very key terms very early on, such as, it sounds very obvious, but like cocktail delivery, pre-mixed cocktails, that wasn't nomenclature that people really understood. Pre-mixed wasn't really a term that shouted delicious back in the day. And there was actually this moment throughout 2020 where we shifted from talking about like cocktails at home, enjoy cocktails at home, cocktail delivery, cocktail through your letterbox delivery, letterbox gifts, to pre-mixed. And it was this significant shift, and it wasn't just Neo doing that, it was this acceptance suddenly of food and beverage and fresh delivery to your door. And we happen to obviously be part of that, but having a very strong search approach, being very clear on customer service and that customer experience up front, certainly helped safeguard us from a lot of the growth pains that we had throughout the year. But also making sure that people were believing in us, because I think that was a classic year of like the Instagram fake brands, where you would kind of go, oh yeah, sure, I'll give it a go, because that's how we're discovering the world right now. We're stuck at home, we can't go out to a retail store. But trust was so important, so making sure that we had cues around real customer reviews, or at least people that were able to speak on our behalf, so influencers or press, and then making sure that the product actually arrived. So a lot of 2020 for us wasn't actually being a cocktail company necessarily, it was being a delivery company and making sure that we were super, super transparent, and overdoing the communication around how your product is, where it is, why it's not there with you yet if it's not there. And then we got to have all the fun stuff around the unboxing once it arrived at your house.
Yeah, I love that. Like that proactivity around the customer experience is an easy one to miss. Like I think a lot of the traps that brands sometimes fall into is kind of reacting once there's a problem. And I think what was impressed me about Neo was actually you sort out the problem before it became an issue, and that's really important, I guess. Sophie or Will, anything to say on that kind of customer experience and how that plays an importance?
Yeah, I think to your point, Amy, that you were saying there was a couple of things in there that definitely we can relate to. I thought it was quite interesting how you were saying about the search terms and linking that in with PR from your side. It definitely makes sense. I think one of the key things, so we use Trustpilot for our reviews, and it's super, super important to us. And yeah, as you were saying earlier, Will, it's definitely not just a sales channel, but it's ultimately the best way for us to be able to use it as well, is having that direct relationship with your customer, really understanding them, talking to them, communicating to them, getting feedback. We definitely have a different format specifically at the moment. On our D2C website, we have boxes at the moment, which is we over-index on specifically for the at-home occasion. So it just lends itself really well. And also, offering merch on our website is something that you can't get in store at the moment, or, at bar or restaurants. So actually what is fitting more into that moment for the consumer. And sorry, just going back to the Trustpilot reviews, some of the, luckily we have like an excellent rating on there, but when we do see negative comments, it's usually around delivery or some kind of operational frustration. I think it's one of those things that Rory Sutherland talks about a lot with Uber, where it's like customers often get annoyed when they don't know how long something's going to take. But even if you say to them, this is how long it's going to take, or this is when you can expect it, then actually, even if it's probably a little bit longer than they hoped, but at least they know, it eliminates that frustration. So I think, just being really transparent and just following up with flow emails, just being, giving the customer that regular update, and then also remembering just to follow up afterwards. Actually, we had a conversation early this morning in a team meeting about how can we make sure that we're encouraging people, once they've purchased and tried us at home, getting on there and leaving those reviews, because it feeds into that trust element and word of mouth ultimately that people are going to buy into.
Impacts the bottom line as well.
Yeah,
just exactly. On that, yeah, it's direct to your conversion rate on the website as well. So it's and even your ad sets, any sort of visual communication, that it does directly impact click-through and conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, trust is a massive piece for what we're doing conversion. Just having reviews on a website, both the company review and product reviews is super important, but it's also the learnings you can get from those reviews that can then help you develop ad campaigns, messaging, and just improve the experience on the website and in the product itself. It's something I'm doing all the time is review mining for clients, and we're just trying to find out what are the key themes that come up for people who are happy with the product and the business, and what are the key themes that come up with the people who aren't happy, and we try and use that insight to improve the business. So that could be messaging around the strength of the drink was not what they expected. So you've just got to make sure, well, what are we saying on the website? Does that match up with what people are experiencing? And it could be just how people are talking about why they want the products in the first place. And that's amazing language for you to be able to use to actually acquire new customers. If the big thing that comes out of reviews is it's I don't know, outside events, right? So lockdown, it was a great summer. So if everyone's saying they're perfect for chucking in a bowl of ice and sitting outside with a barbecue, then that could be messaging for a whole ad campaign, and that can just come from that customer feedback. And just a final point on that, what I've found is, so we do this with customer service as well, but what I've found is that the language and the openness that people give on a review is much more than they'll give you through customer service, because they see it as, they're talking to you, the brand. And so the way they describe it is a bit different to how they're just posting it publicly to the world and just letting everyone else know their thoughts.
Super interesting. I think just actually digging, I think again, we sometimes forget we've got direct access to the consumer through, versus retail channels versus on-premise channels. We're able to kind of speak directly to the consumer. And I've certainly in the past literally just picked, with their permission, picked up the phone and just had a chat with, 10, 15 customers on the phone for 15 minutes, because you can learn so much from that conversation around, what they're enjoying about the service and ways to improve. Granted, they're on the phone with you, so they may not always be totally honest, because there's a element of they may say what you want to hear, but it can also throw up some interesting ideas that perhaps you hadn't thought of. And equally, you can do the same with lapsed customers, or finding out why have they left, what's going on, and kind of hopefully bringing them back into the fold. So yeah, it's always a tip I give people, is just like pick up the phone and speak to them directly, or fire out a survey or an email to dig into something a little bit more. So I wanted to actually look quickly at the role of e-commerce generally, and then the different channels that are available within that. So we know e-commerce played a significant role in the rise of digital, with multiple different channels now available, everything from your D2C website, Amazon, to Instagram, TikTok Shop, delivery apps, the metaverse. I'd love to kind of chat a little bit more about how do drinks brands make the most of the platforms available, and maybe some of the crucial ones to be on here now in 2023. What are we learning? I'll go to Sophie first, and then Will.
Yeah, I mean, at the very basic level, if it is a sales channel, ultimately, I would say, Shopify is such a simple, user-friendly platform to get set up. If you're looking to reach your consumers directly, then I would say that's kind of a pretty crucial platform, or something similar to that. It's pretty self-intuitive, and I think ultimately that how you can integrate it with other apps as well, and widgets is great. Although ultimately it all comes back to, where are your consumers shopping, or rather, how are they shopping, and how are they looking to interact and learn more about your brand or product? So, for example, if it really is a Gen Z audience, and something such as, the energy drink sector, we know that this is massively popular among gamers, then something like the metaverse or platforms like Twitch are probably going to be the right space that you need to be exploring. Or if your consumer's all about convenience, and something like Amazon Prime and making sure you're on that is relevant. Things like the metaverse isn't something that I would say that we are looking into immediately, just because there is so much for us to go after in real life at the moment. But I do find it very interesting how drinks brands are looking and exploring this space. I think, wasn't it Heineken Silver, I feel like, they did a campaign where they launched on to Decentraland, and they did a bit of a focus, like tapping into that audience there. And I feel like I can't not mention the likes of Prime energy drink, and how that's taken off through a younger audience, particularly on TikTok, and using that platform to basically springboard their brand awareness. And it's just gone ridiculously viral. I feel like the brand has just done that overnight. And that's just, even the likes of random off licenses from Wakefield selling the drinks bottles for £100 on a black market is ultimately creating, this viralness on socials. But I think, it ultimately comes back down to, is it something that it's more of a sales opportunity, or is it to be able to reach and connect with your audience more? One other brand that just comes to mind as well is Liquid Death. I would say are a great example of a brand that traditionally hasn't spent maybe they have now, but I know that they haven't or didn't spend anything on advertising, but what they did do is ultimately built their brand through socials, just through random crazy videos, but they ultimately tapped into a much more of a cultural base. Rather, it was almost culture first, product second. And even if you go onto their homepage, on their landing page on their D2C website, it's literally their hero mod is just social reels that they'll have on their social platforms. So that's just, for me, is an example of actually, those social channels being pretty crucial if that's the way that you're trying to connect with your audience. But ultimately, who is it and how do they shop and where are they? Something like I'm just trying to think of an old world heritage brand might not make sense to be on TikTok or Be Real or whatever it is. So yeah, ultimately about where your consumers are.
Yeah, 100%. There's actually a question here around, I guess, promoting drinks brands on platforms that restrict alcohol content, like we know TikTok does, and that's age related. So
very good question. Very good question. I think ultimately we can't link sell in platforms, so Instagram, TikTok, and I think what we do, well, for example, at Nice, what we do try and do is just use it as an opportunity to kind of emotionally connect with our audience in other ways, like around occasion and moment. We have what we call a bit of a social series online where we have our random act of niceness. So we feed into our name and nature, and it's all about making it nice to the consumer and just how can we make someone's day that bit nicer. And so actually what we do is we're able to flex these different pieces of content throughout the year, just surprising and delighting people and just giving a bit of a different interaction and engagement with our audience that sometimes doesn't even have anything to do with our product or trying to push sales with our product, but it's just about continuing to reach our audiences through that narrative. But ultimately, it is a challenge. I think there's other things that we can do. We can still sort of link to our merch pages, albeit sort of quite limited, but emails is something that is a huge focus for us as well. Although yes, it is different trying to capture that customer at top of funnel. Once we've got them in, we often find that they perform really well for us. So it's a challenge, but it's just thinking about different ways we can interact with them.
Yeah, emails is, I think, definitely sometimes an underestimated tool that's grown over the years in terms of your ability to, you've already got an engaged database, people on your newsletter that are already kind of warm leads for the brand. So if they're not already buying, then your ability to convert them is stronger. Let's touch on a platform that we know we can sell alcohol and drinks on, specifically thinking of Amazon. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the advantages and disadvantages of using, say, your own website for sales versus Amazon. I know from my own experience, Amazon plays quite a different role from our website. So I generally say Amazon's a little bit more suited towards newer customers who are kind of just want to try one bottle, want it next day, versus our website where potentially more loyal customers can pick up great offers on bundles. So Will, you touched on this earlier, and I'd love to hear kind of your opinion on this, but in terms of that trading up and also it's a great platform for us to sell our taster boxes where people just want to trial the brand at a lower cost. What are your thoughts, Will, on kind of the Amazon versus, I guess, D2C question? Yeah,
so I think there's a lot of value in using Amazon if you're ready to use it. I haven't got too much experience of the management logistics side of Amazon, but I understand that if you're running out of stock, Amazon doesn't like that, right? So you have to make sure you are ready to launch on Amazon. But one thing you've got to consider is there are Amazon customers, right? They're not brand customers buying on Amazon. They're Amazon customers buying because they have Amazon Prime. That's, if they see your product there, that's where they're going to buy it. So it's a great opportunity to tap into that audience and just kind of say, well, almost treat them, I suppose, like a supermarket, right? People they're gonna browse there first. If they find the product, they might buy it there. They might come across and check out the brand. But I think it's good to accept that, there's a good chance they're going to buy it from Amazon because they can get it the next day. You've also got the review side of Amazon. And I saw a great example of this a few months ago, actually, about Morrison's, because I think Morrison's is their Amazon Fresh partner. And this guy pointed out that it was something like bananas had like one review on the Morrison's website and had hundreds of maybe thousands of reviews on the Amazon site. So just looking at it from a review and customer feedback and trust point of view, that's another big advantage to being on Amazon, because you might get the opposite kind of customer journey happening where someone clicks on your advert, has a look at your website, checks to see if you're on Amazon, discovers you there, and then reads through hundreds of, well, they're not going to read hundreds of reviews, but they see that there's loads of reviews and that builds that trust up. And then, they might come back to you because that's where they came to initially to buy, or if they're an Amazon customer, they might just buy there. There's the point I touched on earlier, which I'll just mention briefly again, which was, you've got the opportunity to acquire customers through Amazon by giving them opportunities to get to your website that comply with Amazon's terms and conditions around that. And then when you get into your website, you can try and capture their email address, or you can just make it clear that you've got a much wider product offering off Amazon. And I'm sure you've all received like a little postcard or something with a QR code, or register your warranty on our website. It's ways of getting people off Amazon onto those brands. So if you can stick a landing page up, this is where you have to be a little bit careful, because you can't really attack Amazon and say, this is why you should shop with us. But give them that specific experience of almost like, we know that you're not our customer, so we're trying to touch on that on this landing page without being too overtly, we're trying to get you to come across from Amazon. And then the final point is that I was speaking to a sports supplement brand, and they basically used Amazon to launch onto websites like Walmart, Target, and other huge retail brands, because it's much easier to get going with Amazon. You can get launched pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You get those sales, you work on that experience there, and then you can go over to those supermarkets and say, this is what we sell on a monthly basis on Amazon. Do you want a piece of this? And when you can go to them with that actual data and say, from a retail kind of retail sales on Amazon, does that interest you, basically?
Yeah, it's a great sales story, and also I think you bring up a really interesting point around, like, if someone's on your website, the chances are they really know who you are as a brand, and they're going to buy you. Whereas if they're on Amazon, they could just be looking for a really generic term within your category, and actually they land on you. Amy, Neo's on Amazon as well as has their own D2C. What I guess, what's your view on this?
I think Will's covered quite a few of the really important points, and we've touched on it a little bit on other questions around making sure that you have a unique proposition. And then I think you summarize it perfectly, that they're not necessarily your customer, they're an Amazon customer. And it goes back to just saying, and I guess being honest with yourself and going, yeah, okay, we can't deliver the perfect brand experience through Amazon, but we can tailor it and craft it and still build in some brand education so that unboxing experience. Like for us at Neo, we've specifically created either like mono gusto, we call them in Italian, but like single flavor boxes, at much bigger sizes, different sized packs. They're completely different price points to what we sell on our D2C websites, and we've done that in multiple markets. So now we've launched in many regions across Europe as well, from an Amazon and a D2C point of view. But particular for us is still that lead gen, discovery, trial type angle. And then you'll have the odd customer that you can sort of tend to build out a persona where they're just going after the prime convenience, because wherever they are in the country, it's getting there faster than we could from our point of view. And as someone in CRM, I go, okay, great, that's fine. If we're able to still keep shipping and they're coming back and they're buying again, and I'm still able to ship to the FBA warehouse at Amazon, and I'm still moving product, that's still great. We wouldn't want it to overtake from a Neo point of view. It serves a very specific role. But for us, it's always making sure that we have a much better range on our own website, that we have unique flavor offerings. There's an American soda brand called Olipop that does fantastic bespoke launches on their own website. I think they're one of the coolest fun brands out there from a non-alc soda point of view, not a cocktail space, that does excellent brand engagement. And you want to be on their website because they're just cool and quirky and fun. You want to be on their text list, again, because they're cool and quirky and fun. You would never get that from Amazon. So they've just, they've recognized that certain channels off their website will help get their brand out there, and it's accessible and it's convenient. But their true loyal fans will end up finding their way to the website. So it's that customer journey. How do you cleverly recognize where they're at in their journey, and then take those moments like Will was talking about around being very cognizant and careful about a warranty or a specific brand education landing page that at least gets them aware that you exist as a direct to consumer offering.
Yeah. No, amazing. All really great advice. Thank you, guys. I think Aaron, we're going to stop now and just have a quick poll break and actually
do a little couple poll questions. Get the audience. Thank you. Thank you guys. It's been really interesting so far. So I think we've just got a couple of interactive questions for you guys, the audience. So let me launch our first one, and hopefully the tech is working all okay this time. But be great to see what you guys think. So can everyone see that first one? Yeah. Lovely. Okay, so the first poll is looking at research that shows there's quite a broad spectrum of consumer opinion when it comes to brands using AI. What percentage of customers are willing to use AI in their daily lives? Is it 28%, 63%, 76%, or 18%? So I'll give you guys, another minute or a couple seconds rather to keep thinking. Great, you can see answers coming in. All right, time's up. Let me share. All right, so that's what the opinion was. The answer is B, actually. 63% of consumers are willing to use AI in their daily lives if it provides them with greater convenience. However, 53% are also, that comes with concerns about the loss of privacy associated with AI. So quite contradictory there. You can see some of the concerns that come up when introducing these digital tools into the brand and our experience. So thank you. Great. We'll do one more. Let's see. Okay. All right.
An oxymoron. We want the convenience and experience, but not.
But we want the security.
Our privacy.
We want everything, but we don't want any risk. Cool. Poll 2, looking at Coca-Cola. Who recently has done a lot with NFTs, gone very large. So how much did Coca-Cola make off its foray into the metaverse with the launch of the brand's first ever NFT collectibles? Was it 1.2 million, 800,000, 20,000, or just over 500,000? Quite some big figures there. I remember when this came out. Great. Give you guys a couple more seconds. All right. Let's see. And for that one, the answer is D, just over 500,000. So they auctioned in 72 hours. In 72 hours, they auctioned over 500,000 for Coca-Cola's NFT as a single loot box via the OpenSea marketplace, with all the proceeds for that going to Special Olympics International. Yeah, so raised quite a lot there. Great.
Amazing.
Ellie, back over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. So we'll continue on with our questions. So I'm finding this super interesting. So the next couple of questions I want to just focus on and talk about adapting to digital and really how that gets implemented across an entire business and brand strategy, and really touch on what the key factors brands need to consider when adapting to digital, looking at things like some of the things we've already touched on: consumer experience, sales strategy, essentially the overall, and how much emphasis should be placed on each. What tactics have you or the brands you've worked on employed, and what works versus what doesn't work? I'll start with Will.
Yeah, so I suppose these aren't exactly tactics, it's more the approach we take, but we find that generally targeting anxieties and targeting motivation is what generally gets people to convert on a website, whether that's a conversion to a sale or to an email address or whatever it is you're trying to do, because that goal is going to depend on the business and what you're trying to achieve with your digital presence. But by anxieties, we mean all the questions and concerns someone might have about your products and your brand, right? So if they've never heard of you, there's going to be some trust concerns, right? So that's about social proof, guarantees, warranties, making sure that customer service is visible on a website, or it could be about the product itself. So this is particularly important with consumable products, right? People need to know what is in these products, and they need to be confident that they are going to be fine consuming those. So, there might be some concerns about allergens, or it might simply be, how strong are these drinks? What is the quality of the alcohol that's going into these drinks? And then the motivation side is kind of those desired outcomes that people have from buying products. So what are they trying to get out of these products? What's the event or occasion that they want to buy for? What sort of feeling do they want around these products? And we found that, by really targeting these two things in particular, you really build up that customer experience, that brand experience. You build up trust by being transparent with people. If everything is clearly laid out, that builds trust as well. And that's generally what builds that good digital experience, whether it's through a D2C website or just other digital channels as well.
Great, I love that. So understand their anxieties, meet their kind of motivations, and build that trust. Sophie, so we mentioned earlier, Nice is the fastest growing canned wine brand in the UK. We heard that one of the factors in your success is your business model, which is always to be led by the consumer. How has the consumer experience impacted Nice's sales and digital strategy? And how has the business had to adapt based on feedback?
On feedback, so I guess as part of our mission of being a future wine company, we're always putting the consumer first, which is quite a new thing for the wine industry. And so hearing from our community and feedback is super important to us. And I feel like there's definitely a little bit of benefit of being a slightly smaller business where you can do that so flexibly. So we actually, I think you mentioned you do something similar, Ellie. We basically spend, we do it once a quarter, and we call where we can our Shopify customers, and we just have a series of questions where we keep it quite short, quite sweet, and we just almost say to them, there's a few key questions just to understand, their drivers to purchase, how they heard about us. And ultimately it's almost, it ends up creating a bit more of this advocacy for them, because then we ultimately say, like, look, as a thank you, we'd love to send you some product, and also it then allows us to shape things like our acquisition strategy, create understanding the best comms that we can go out with when we're thinking about performance marketing. For example, some of the things when we're often speaking to our customers are, a lot of people aren't actually buying us for themselves, they're buying as a gift. So it's a lot of the feedback that they're saying is like, oh, but it was quite a cool thing, it's quite different to sending just a bottle of wine, and something a bit different. And so that we got that as great feedback from speaking directly to them. So like when we're thinking about targeting, it's whether or not consider buying us as a gift. So things like that, it definitely has helped shape us, particularly from a marketing standpoint. Another channel that's had a bit of a knock-on effect, or this halo effect, particularly linking to our digital side of the business, is through travel. So we are the only wine on board Virgin Atlantic flights in economy and premium economy, and it's incredible the amount of people that we'll speak to, or friends of friends, or word of mouth, that just say, "Oh my God, yeah, nice, I've tried you on a flight." And then interestingly, I mean, this is just ideal scenario. What we've then found through Trustpilot and also Shopify is a couple of reviews that we've had left recently. They said, tried on my Virgin Atlantic flight, thought it was great, and decided to buy. So then we can actually connect and see, you know, what their order was, and that's just a really great way of them ultimately, driving trial through that experience, and then following up with ordering us direct. So I think we wouldn't have, you know, really been able to identify that had we have not had those reviews left. So it's really important for us to be able to connect the dots that way. And then another area that we're also exploring in terms of feedback, Will, you mentioned it earlier, was things like NPD. So we are going to be launching a new product in the coming months, and we will be doing a bit of a like limited edition run on D2C first, ultimately being, you know, allowing our community or top VIPs like to be first to try, because ultimately we want them to provide us with a little bit of feedback. Like it's the most valuable source of feedback that you can get on things like that, and then, you know, that will allow us to then help define and shape how we develop things like our campaign and how we go out with that. So I think if you have the flexibility to be able to do that, it's definitely worthwhile. And then just finding one other thing, when kind of linking things up in real life to URL, was when we did a couple of stunts last year, where we kind of took to the streets of London, and we had a couple of different activations where we did a bit of a flash mob dance, and being an alcohol brand, instead of you know, sampling cans there and then on the street, what we did have was the biggest comeback of 2021, the QR code on some lanyards. And we allowed people to, you know, ask if they wanted to try some wine. They could then scan this QR code, they take them to a landing page, they'd have to sign up, and just fill in their address, and then we'd follow up a week later by sending them a can of wine direct to their door. So it's almost kind of, you know, you have that interaction with the consumer. You can then you know, bring them into your world and kind of data capture, and then follow up with them actually trying the product. So that was kind of an example of where we're able to connect all of those dots as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Sophie. Super interesting. And I love the reference to the QR code. I think we've got COVID to thank COVID for anything. It's the comeback of the QR code. Someone in the chat actually just asked about how you encourage feedback from customers. I think you guys have touched on a few interesting points, actually. I mean, you know, number one, just picking up the phone and speaking to them, and maybe incentivizing them through product to give up their time. Email surveys is a great way, QR codes on products, or you know, if you are in a physical retail space, that's always a way to kind of link back. We mentioned Amazon as well, bringing it back to the website. Again, you can include sometimes leaflets and cards in there, which again can link back to feedback. So there's an enormous amount of ways, I guess, to connect with the customer. Moving on, I just wanted to touch on education. It's something that we've touched on briefly in this chat, but specifically digital education and how to do it well. So, you know, I think it's fair to say digital education became somewhat of the norm during COVID, with brands turning from everything to AR or voice-assisted education strategies at home. We now have innovations like ChatGPT. Amy, Neo is quite a unique brand with really distinctive packaging format. You know, square cocktails delivered through your letterbox. I personally hadn't seen that before I tried it. How did you overcome the barriers around educating consumers on how to consume Neo at home?
It's been and continues to be one of our, I guess, most focused areas across all of our acquisition channels, and then how to better and continue to better explain who we are and what we are, because I've got them sitting next to me, so I'll hold one up. But we're a we're a square with liquid inside, and you don't have to add anything to it. It's fully pre-mixed. And even when we're now at events and whether that's a retail or a sampling, people are like, what is that? Is it chocolate? I've even had someone say, are they stockings? What are you selling? Is it powder? And so because we were in a situation where we couldn't physically hand a product to anyone, on the specific lockdown moments, everything had to be prioritized towards it. Visuals. So primary video, as long as we could show some kind of pouring action in a video, or at least a still image of the pour shot. We worked out relatively quickly just through our this is only 3 years ago, where it was much cheaper to run digital ads and to learn from them, but that was something that we learned very, very quickly within just a couple of months, that it was this pour, we call them the pour shot in our team, is the hero for us. And so everything became very focused on from just getting people to understand what the product actually was our first step. We didn't want to spend a huge amount of time on building out this brand culture until we knew that the product market fit was actually going to work. And so that's why in the UK specifically, we spent quite a bit of time in 2020 just trying to work out what's the first 3 seconds we need to show someone to make them think it's delicious, to make them think it's premium, to make them actually want to try it, because they understand that that's a cocktail coming out of a box. And still just in a short space of time, and I'm sure Sophie can talk to this from a nice point of view, things coming out of a box was not sexy, and it was certainly not meant to be delicious. So there's quite a few brands that have been tackling this from both a sustainable point of view, saying there's lots of different formats out there that are much better for us, and for the environment, and also making sure that people understand that it is actually really good ingredients inside. And you don't just have to go and get a giant bottle of something, unless you're really keen for throwing a party, or you want to mix your own drinks, if you will. So a lot of it was spent on the visuals, and then I guess I spent a little bit of time at the top talking about like people in the cocktail world, and we had to do quite a bit of education on the fact that the pre-mixed was okay. It's okay to drink something that's pre-mixed. That's not something that's low quality necessarily. And we took quite a bit of time working out that customer journey from, if they've seen this particular ad, this is the landing page that they need to visit, and this is what they need to see. And this is how to step them through into the cocktail world so that they start exploring different flavors. We worked out classic things like if they come and buy a Cosmopolitan, they're more likely to purchase again. So those more common understood terms like Margarita, Daiquiri, Cosmo were more likely to get people into the world, rather than trying to say, oh, we have all these interesting house versions, like we have a Jim Prude, we have a Garden from Russia. No one really understands what that means. It's also not great from a search and SEO optimization point of view. So we really needed to focus on what the audience already understood and meet them sort of halfway, and how we visually communicated that, and then how we got them to explore the website. We've mentioned a couple of different brands around landing pages and sort of the connection between taking social content and mixing it up. And I think there's some brands doing a fantastic job out there of really looping in your social onto your landing pages. So there's a company called Space Goods that's I'm sure lots of us have seen it in the UK. They're a functional mushroom drink business, and they're obsessed with their social community and entering those little videos and actually designing their landing pages all around those vertical videos, so you can scroll through them and see the social proof without having to read anything. That's certainly something that's new. I think that's not new, but it's become the big thing for landing pages now, just in the last sort of 6 months, rather than just having it hosted only on your social channel, but actually lifting it and displaying it on your website. And then there was lots of things around making them believe that we're good. So again, that's the social proof and the reviews. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about reviews. Once we could finally sample in physical, having those conversations with customers and understanding what those confusions were around it's liquid in a box. It could be as simple as that, or it could be that they didn't understand how to open and tear and pour it into a glass. And so we would create post-purchase journeys and specific email communications and text message communications to help people get through what you, as someone that's so invested in your product, thinks is super obvious. It often really isn't at all. And so it was sometimes those shocking moments where you're like, oh, we're still back at the start. We're still just on the, this is what we are, and that we're a delicious product. Okay, all right, we're going to go back to the start, rather than getting too excited with, getting caught up in how to interject into an occasion, and sort of insert your brand into an occasion. So, on the sampling thing, we created a whole bunch of taste testers in each market that we were active in during lockdown. So that was how we really started to get some traction and some real life UGC content and stuff that we could then amplify further. Was just like you said, Ellie, picking up the phone, having a conversation with them, asking them if they'd like to try a new product that we were about to release, and then really leveraging that for as much as we could as well, so that it was beneficial for both them getting free product and for us.
Amazing. Thank you, Amy. Loads of really, really great points there. Sophie, Will, anything, I guess, to add on the consumer education part before we move on and hopefully do a couple more polls?
Yeah, so I'd say just from our point of view, similar to you guys, Amy, there's definitely for us, it was ultimately we're new for format for the wine category in particular. So one of the biggest barriers that we've faced is ultimately, wine from a can is definitely, or was definitely, a new concept when the business first started. And I think, people like to be able to see the product in use, or how the liquid is going to look, because, through a can, you can't see what the liquid does look like. For something like a pale rosé is quite a unique selling point. So making sure that it's quite clear and what people are going to be buying, and actually what the liquid does look like. But I think generally going forward for us, it's actually a piece of work that we're looking at the moment, as part of our mission to be a more approachable and a less intimidating wine business. We're yet to educate, I suppose, like the educational experience in a way on digital that really connects with our audience. Like, we've managed to achieve this through our formats and on our packaging and, below the line activity. But now the focus, or the next thing, is like, how do we almost like educate this next generation of wine drinkers in a way that really resonates with them? So, for example, particularly through like Gen Z or even millennials now, I think it was GWI did a study around what Gen Z want to see on social, and one of the biggest things is funny content or inspirational and educational content. We're seeing lots of these like TikToks and video short form series of people actually like educating. I think something ridiculous, like there's more people searching things on TikTok now in particular versus say Google, but for example, there's this growing group of up and coming sommeliers who are using this platform to educate their audience on an otherwise quite unattainable subject for a lot of people. This subject matter is quite tricky and difficult to break down, and there's definitely this younger audience that are coming into the fold. And I say a young wine drinker is technically classed, believe it or not, around about late 20s, early 30s, in comparison of your traditional wine drinker, I guess you could say. So I think, it's for us, it's definitely something that we are working on, but it's around distilling something that is quite a complex subject, if you like, and just distilling it in a way that our consumers, really, really can understand.
Amazing. Thanks, Amy.
Just one quick thing for me. A big mistake I see a lot of brands making is producing content, particularly educational content, writing FAQs and things based on what they think customers want to hear, and not what customers are asking for and feedback on. So it's really important to go ask the questions, to read reviews, just audit customer service logs and see what questions people are asking, and then go and answer those questions, rather than just assuming, a set of questions, which might look like a fairly legit set of questions, but the consumers there's always a bit more deeper detail that people want. That's the real question, not just it's not necessarily just which alcohol is in this product. There's how much of this alcohol is in it, or whatever that slightly deeper bit of information is.
Yeah,
calories. They always want to know the calories. Trust me, they'll want to know the calories.
Calories and sugar.
Oh, that's really interesting. I think, and also there's often like different ways to present that content. That can be in the form of a, website Q&A, or it could be integrated into your comms strategy and placed in within your emails, or your social media content. So yeah, just I guess it depends on the type of information. Before we jump into some polls, I've actually got a question here from Julie. Hi, Julie. She said, what in your experience would you say are the critical success factors for innovation in a busy drinks market? Yeah, I'd love if we could maybe just get a couple of thoughts on that from you guys. Big question.
Yeah, that is. And it is a fair question, because there is a lot of drinks brands out there. I think from our point of view, and probably similar for you, Amy, is for us, it's, it has been around format, and more of like the packaging side of things, or, there's also, depending on what trends are emerging, and the next big thing, it's about what's that innovation in liquid, or, what's going to be the next CBD drink, what's going to be the next, I don't know, adaptogenic drink, whatever it's going to be, no and low, obviously. So I think for us, it's been predominantly around that pack format and tapping into specific occasions. So cans for on the go, boxes for at home, and now wine on tap on draft for the on trade has been the key thing that has been the innovation for us. But yeah, I think in terms of in liquid in general, I'd say probably looking at the trends that are emerging. You go to the States and there's 10 times the amount of what we have. With some crazy ingredients, but yeah, just from I would say from NICE's point of view, that's how we've kind of innovated.
Yeah, here at WonderWorks, we actually did our last topic was all around functional drinks and innovation in that. So we had the US versus UK perspective. So if that is of interest, Julie, it's also on our site. But yeah, you can definitely see the innovation in liquid tends to be huge, but also what you're saying, Sophie, about the different channels and what formats work for each, it seems quite critical as well. So
yeah, I think format is a great shout, because it just gives the opportunity to kind of try out different channels and reach consumers in different ways, and smaller formats can be way more convenient as well. So it's definitely not something to be overlooked. So, Aaron, should we jump into a few more poll questions before?
Yes, let's do a final few before we wrap up. Let's see.
Yes.
All right. Great. Right. So we've got one here around kind of online virtual experiences. So according to Euromonitor International, their Voice of the Consumer study last year, how many consumers value online virtual experiences when it comes to learning about drinks? Is it 49%, 21, 65, or 33? Let's see what you think. Give you a couple more seconds. Can see people changing their answers. Great. Right, and the answer for that is yes, A, 49%. So 49% of global consumers agree with the statement that they value online virtual experiences. Then you've also got a figure quite high, saying about, I think, 70% saying they also look at real world experiences too and find value there. So again, it's that kind of balance between virtual and in life as well. Let me go back. Perfect. All right, shall we do one more?
Let's do it.
All right, question 4. So with nearly 60% of consumers using platforms like Instagram and TikTok, which we've touched on a lot today, to research products online before making a purchase, what percentage do we think of drinks brands are actually using these different platforms today for sales specifically? So is it 30%, 98, 76, or 80%? And quite high figures there as well. Great, I'll give you a couple more seconds. Perfect. And then the answer for that one is D. 80% of the top global beverage companies have an active presence on at least one major social media platform that have led to widespread adoption of that platform as a tool for sales in the drinks industry. So yeah, I think touching on again what Sophie, you were commenting about earlier on those different social platforms, and also some of the restrictions around what you can and cannot say as a drinks brand. Definitely seeing a huge uptake there as well. Great. Ellie, I'll hand back over to you. I think we've probably got time for maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah, I actually I'm gonna mention this question because it kind of links actually to that last poll, which is from Alex, who asked, is it possible to build awareness for drinks / spirit brands with millennials solely through digital? What do we think?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes, as well. Why? How?
I again, just thinking from my experience, I mean, millennials are probably one of the biggest chunk of people who would consume us. Although having said that, we do find that our audience is a little bit skewed. So we actually have a slightly older demographic who will shop and buy us direct, which is quite interesting. And then we have a slightly younger audience who will buy us elsewhere. But yes, I definitely think outside of digital. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, and maybe just purely because it's maybe alcohol brands that I've worked at, but definitely building awareness through the on-trade in particular is a really great way to connect with that kind of audience, just because in terms of experiences and having emotional connection, you know, there's only so much that you can do in an off-trade environment with things like aisle thins and whatever else, but in the on-trade, it's a very different way that people will go there, what they're going there for, you know, how they're interacting with other people. And I think there's definitely a lot more flexibility and fun to be had in that kind of environment. And I think, you know, we're social creatures, and ultimately being able to build brand awareness through that channel has, quite a lot of opportunity for millennials in particular. So I think, Ellie, you've probably seen similar things as well from your side. So I think, definitely from an offline perspective, it's just important, and if not as important, you need to be doing kind of both of those things in tandem, I would say.
Yeah, 100% agree. So just conscious of time, and also want to open up the floor for a few questions at the end, but just to kind of close off, I mean, you guys have been brilliant in sharing your insights and experiences across digital. I'm sure everyone who's joined here today has found it incredibly useful, and I know I've definitely learned a few things as well. Just touching on, I guess, the future of digital, and in today's market, you know, is there still a role for brands who don't play in digital at all? What does today's consumer want? And in your own words, what do you think is next in digital for drinks? Where do we think, we touched on at the beginning around the landscape, but where do we think it's heading? I will start with maybe Will.
Okay. Role for brands who don't play in digital. I think there's maybe not having a D2C sales website you might be able to get away with, but to ignore digital completely, I think you'd find it very, very difficult. I mean, just being able to put ads in front of anyone you want on Facebook, you know, you could pick one ads channel, and that would be significantly beneficial for a brand. And when you've got, you know, when there's dozens out there, and you could put ads in front of the right people, whether that's through performance marketing or through influencers or whatever, I think that's really important. What's next? I want to see more brands trying to build experiences on their websites to help customers find the products that they actually want to buy, bearing in mind that a lot of people don't know what they want, but also a lot of people are open to new products, new flavors. So I think Amy mentioned it earlier on about identifying, what spirits do people want to drink? What flavors do they like to drink? And, essentially using things like product wizards to ask a few questions to then say, oh, okay, we think you're going to like this cocktail. Or you might even say, well, based on your answers, we would suggest this bundle or this subscription or something. And, kind of guiding people to what they should buy based on what they're telling you they like. So at the end of it, you're kind of saying, well, it's not us recommending a product to you, it's you. It's you've decided on what this product should be that is being recommended to you, because that's what you've told us. So I think that's not just in the drinks industry actually, but just generally. I think there's a big opportunity there to just help people find what they want by just having them click a few, almost like yes, no, or multiple choice questions, rather than treating a website just like a catalog.
Yeah, I agree. You see that a lot from the beauty industry and the fashion industry, in terms of, trying to identify your preferences and take you down a kind of more personalized, bespoke route. So I'm sure we'll definitely see a lot of that. Thanks, Will. Sophie, Amy, any final thoughts, closing thoughts from you on the future of the industry and how important it is as part of the mix?
Yeah, I think you're right, definitely, Will, with personalization, and people just kind of getting to find out what they do want. I just think of it from a wine perspective, it's such a daunting thing for people to try and understand. And I think there's definitely something to be said, probably not just for drinks brands in general, but brands in general. I mean, I am actually, I don't know too much about it, but this kind of new development of the next step of chat bots, or, you put in a question and you get an automatic answer in full detail of exactly, like you could just ask, I don't know, like more details on how a Sauvignon Blanc is made, or whatever the question needs to be, and you'll just get an automatic answer. So I think automation in terms of response and personalization is definitely a big one.
Brilliant, thank you. I mean, when ChatGPT starts to monetize, it'll be super interesting. It feels like it's gonna be taking on Google, which will be a big one. And Amy, any thoughts from your side?
For me, I think there's a bit of, omni-channel, I think, is definitely here to stay. I think it's proved it's beneficial for, even if you start scaling in one area, the incremental win that you can have by a combined approach, I think is truly proven now. Something that I don't know if it's necessarily going to take off yet, but certainly mixed reality experience, MR, is kind of like a new hot topic, not just pure virtual, not just pure in real life, but having a mix where you're blending for a brand that's at home and trying to get just really own and nail that at home cocktail moment. That is sort of interesting, around trying to blend what you would normally experience out at a bar. Can you add some of that environment in with a mixed reality experience is certainly interesting. And I still think that SMS marketing is largely underrated. You have to be super careful in what you're saying, and if you're alcohol or not alcohol in certain markets. But I really do think that SMS, and now with WhatsApp being better integrated into a lot of different e-com platforms, like different customer service systems and stuff now, allowing you to connect the dots there with Shopify. For me, it's largely driven by my repeat interest in trying to get the barriers to that repeat reduced. So reducing friction and that one click to purchase. That's another area that I really feel like is not tapped into enough. And serving up once, like Will was saying, and Sophie was agreeing, that once you've pulled them in and they've told you exactly what they're looking for, can you serve that on a silver platter with a magic link that takes them directly to checkout? Yes, please. I would love to do that as a brand. So I definitely think that making life as easy as possible by being restrained with your text marketing, but as helpful as possible, is certainly something that we'll see a lot more of.
Brilliant. Some great takeouts there, Amy. Well, thank you guys. I think we will wrap up there. I mean, I just like some takeaways from me, and this is definitely not all of them, but just kind of different roles that different channels play, and understanding those. People need a clear reason to either go to your D2C or go to Amazon or go to another channel. fantastic customer experience is key. I think, Amy, you talked about choice, quality, convenience, and just have, knowing the areas that you're really focusing on, plus reviews. Will, you mentioning kind of actually focusing on consumer anxieties, what are their motivations, and really building that trust. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't kind of captured nearly everything, but it was super useful to hear from you guys. And I'm conscious of time, so I know we've kind of touched on people's questions as they've come in. I can't see any more in the chat at the moment, so I think that probably assumes that we've covered quite a lot, guys, and actually that's been hopefully incredibly helpful for everyone on the call.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I don't see any more questions coming through, but I will I'll just end briefly by letting you know where you can access kind of some more resources about this as well. So a big thank you to Sophie, Will, and Amy for taking part and being our speakers today and sharing your insights. And also even bigger thank you to Ellie for hosting us and sharing your insights from Colenio. It's been really valuable, and I have definitely learned a lot. We work with a lot of different brands with a lot of different perspectives, big and small, so it's really interesting to hear all of yours and kind of the different insights which have come out of that as well. So I think just for our attendees to let you know that we'll be following up today's discussion with an email which will contain any kind of key resources or some of the facts mentioned. Also a link to each of our panelists and hosts' websites in case you want to check them out. And then we'll also share a recording of the webinar with you as well in case you want to share it with any friends or colleagues in the industry who missed it and might be keen to hear as well. And then as we'll also be doing a bit more of an in-depth piece, an insight report on this topic, looking at some of the key findings that we found out about today, but also a bit more as well. That'll be quite an in-depth report around the topic of building digitally in the drinks industry, and that will be coming out next month. So we will share that with everyone who's attended today as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Sophie, Will, Amy, and Ellie. It's been really lovely and a pleasure for us at WonderWorks to have you all join and share your expertise. And thanks for the audience for engaging as well. So
thanks for having us. It was great.
And if anybody does have any questions, you're more than welcome to drop us at WonderWorks a line, and we can follow up and answer those as well. So cheers.
Thanks so much, guys.
And you. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye. Speak soon. Cheers.